So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions have had a couple news and rumors surrounding the franchise over the last couple of weeks. They've released their new alternate helmet, and they've had a couple rumors about maybe Jameson Williams' suspension being reduced, as well as a player they could potentially trade for or add to the roster in order to add depth at some much-needed positions. So, today I wanted to take a look at those news and rumors, take a look at the new helmet, take a look at the Jameson Williams suspension, and take a look at some players the Lions might potentially be looking to add to improve and strengthen this roster further. But with that being said, let's start off taking a look at the Lions' newest piece of equipment and their new alternate helmets. Now, the Detroit Lions released these a couple days ago, and there's a lot of mixed opinions about these helmets around the internet and even amongst Detroit Lions fans. There's a lot of Lions fans that say that they really like it, that they think it's a really good helmet, that they think that, it's going to be a very good helmet to wear on Sundays. And there's people that think that this is a really bad helmet. There's people that think the lion looks like it was drawn by a fifth grader, that they don't like that the blue doesn't match the typical Honolulu blue. They don't like that the face mask is gray or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of people that have a lot of mixed opinions on this helmet. Personally, I think this helmet is phenomenal. I like this helmet a lot. I think that it is a very good color for the Detroit Lions. I like that it's a little bit of a lighter blue. I think it's a little bit more vibrant of a color. I think the retro logo is done incredibly well on a modern helmet. I obviously think that the lion design is a little bit more simple than what we're used to because it's a logo from the 1960s, but I think it fits the city very well. I like the two stripes, kind of very reminiscent of a muscle car from the Motor City. I think it's a very, very good logo for the Detroit Lions, and I think it's a very nice helmet, but I don't think it matches the gray uniforms very well. I think that it doesn't really go. Funnily enough, I think it's the only uniform this helmet doesn't go with. I think if they went, blue helmet, white jerseys, blue bottoms, I think it would look great. I think if they went all blue, it would look awesome. I think if they used their typical home uniform of the blue tops and the white bottoms or the gray bottoms, it would still look really good with this helmet. But I do think the all grays don't really match the helmet very well. But I don't necessarily think that they're supposed to. The Detroit Lions are up for a uniform redesign in the next offseason, in the 2024 offseason, and we've already been hinted years ago that this is going to be in the works, right? It's already been hinted that they have some things that they're going to change. They have uniforms that they're going to redesign. And I wouldn't be surprised if this helmet was designed to fit with next year's uniforms, if it was designed to go with the new and improved uniforms of the next Detroit Lions season versus the one right now to match a one-season uniform that probably isn't going to be making a return. So I think just in general, to kind of recap, I think the helmet is very well done. I think it is a really nice helmet. I think it looks very good by itself, and I think it looks really good with a lot of the uniforms the Lions have. And I think that the alternate uniform is the thing that's going to change. Once that alternate uniform is changed, I think a lot of more people are going to come around to it. But enough about the new helmet. Let's talk about some NFL players. As everybody likely knows, Jameson Williams, the former first-round pick of the Detroit Lions, was suspended 6 games this year for violating the league's gambling policy. Now, Jameson Williams did not bet on NFL sports. I believe he did not even bet on football. I believe the bet was made on a college basketball team while he was staying in a team hotel for an away game, which technically at that moment in time does count as a team facility, means he technically violated the league's gambling policies. However, the NFL has come out over the last couple of days, over the last week or so, and said, hey, we kind of messed up. right, we haven't really been very forward. We haven't really been that transparent about what the league's gambling policies are, what the rules are, what the restrictions are, what the limitations are of those rules. And without saying it, they've essentially come out and said, yeah, these players don't really deserve a suspension, right? We're going to put out this thing. We're going to make it very clear. We're going to make it known what the rules are, very set in stone now. And we're not going to suspend any more players. But the players that were already suspended aren't getting anything changed, which seems a little bit off to me. It seems a little bit flawed. And I think with the NFL admitting fault, there is a chance that Jameson Williams' suspension is reduced. Now, is this a high likelihood? No. I think more likely than not, Jameson Williams will not be playing until week 7 on Monday night versus the Las Vegas Raiders. But there is a chance, right? In 2010, Ben Roethlisberger was originally suspended for 6 games. After not officially being charged with any legal wrongdoing, his suspension was reduced to 4 games. Now, I know that that is a completely different reason for suspension as well as reason for reduction, but it does show that it has happened in the past. And I do believe that if enough noise is made, I think if enough people make noise on social media, if enough people are going to put out there that Jameson Williams deserves a reduction, that it could potentially come around, right? Again, it's a quarterback situation, but with last year's Deshaun Watson suspension, originally it was 6 games and people were outraged that it wasn't long enough. So the NFL ended up making his suspension longer than it was originally ruled. So the NFL isn't shy of changing the restrictions, or not shy of changing the amount of games a player is suspended for. And we have seen in the past that NFL outroar, that fan uproar, can be a reason why suspensions can change and why suspensions can be prolonged or reduced. So although it's unlikely, I do think with the national outcry of like, hey, this is kind of messed up, we should let Jameson Williams play a little bit sooner. We should let the Colts cornerback play a little bit sooner. We should let, I believe, Shaka Toney from the Washington Commanders play a little bit sooner. There's going to be a lot of teams that have violated these policies that don't know that, or players that have violated the policies that didn't know it at the time. And there are now 3 players that are suspended because of it, not necessarily knowing the rules fully. And I think there is enough outcry from the NFL media. If there's enough uproar from the fan bases, there is a possibility that all of these players get their suspensions reduced to 2 games or 1 game, or completely wiped away in general, with the NFL admitting fault to why these players were suspended. So not necessarily something that is going to happen, but it is a rumor, and there's a lot of people upset right now about the NFL's lack of transparency and lack of communication regarding these new gambling policies. Now, the Detroit Lions have been rumored to add a little bit of talent. Of course, it seems like every single week the Lions are rumored to add a little bit of talent, to get a little bit better, get a little bit deeper on the depth chart, and add some more players to this roster. And this week is no exception, as the Detroit Lions have been named and rumored the favorites for not 1, but 2 players to join the roster this week. First up, Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback Levi Wallace. Now, Levi Wallace has spent 4 years with the Buffalo Bills and spent last season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Over the last 4 seasons, Levi Wallace has totaled 4 interceptions. Over the last 4 years, Levi Wallace has totaled 10 interceptions, and in his career has totaled 43 passes defended. And with the Pittsburgh Steelers adding Patrick Peterson through free agency, with them drafting both Corey Trice as well as Joey Porter Jr. through the NFL draft, they don't really have a need for Levi Wallace anymore. And PFF, as well as multiple Pittsburgh Steelers reporters, have said that, hey, he's a trade candidate and he would make a lot of sense for the Detroit Lions for a day 3 selection. Now, I kind of understand where they're coming from, right? Obviously, it, I think, is a very, hey, this helps out the Pittsburgh Steelers, so let's say it works for the Detroit Lions too, without really looking at the Detroit Lions. But I really don't think it fits the Detroit Lions very well. While Levi Wallace is a very good boundary cornerback, a player that had 4 interceptions a season ago, a player that is a very good, solid rotational boundary cornerback for any NFL team, I really don't think he fits the Detroit Lions very well because of the depth they already have. Right? The argument for the Lions trading for him is, hey, their secondary wasn't very good. They're lacking a lot of depth. They don't have a lot of talent in the secondary, which I think is just not true. I think it is very much turning a blind eye to what the Detroit Lions added this offseason, and very much kind of blindly focusing on what the Pittsburgh Steelers need and what would work for them, and not really looking at what the Detroit Lions did. There's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of PFN mentioned it, and a lot of Steelers reporters are saying, hey, the Lions are lacking depth at cornerback, which really isn't true, right? The Detroit Lions have, I think, 7 guys that can play boundary cornerback, and these are just guys that are going to play on the boundary. You're not guys that are going to play in the slot, not guys that, like CJ Gardner-Johnson or Brian Branch are kind of a safety slot cornerback combination. These are guys that strictly can play on the boundary in the NFL. Cam Sutton, a Pittsburgh Steeler, former Pittsburgh Steeler, added through free agency. Emmanuel Mosley, free agent from the San Francisco 49ers. Jerry Jacobs, a player that was the Detroit Lions' best cornerback a season ago. Will Harris, a player the Lions have liked for a long time and continues to come back to the roster to play a big role on the defense. Ifeatu Melifonwu, a former third-round pick who's made the transition to safety, but has played boundary cornerback for the Detroit Lions in the past and now have a bigger need at boundary cornerback than safety. Sterling Thomas V, right? A young drafted free agent from UAB who has been incredibly impressive throughout OTAs and minicamps, as well as Stephen Gilmore, another UDFA from the University of Marshall, who has been very, very impressive as a Detroit Lions boundary cornerback, despite being an undrafted free agent, both of whom could end up making the final 53-man roster. It doesn't make sense for the Detroit Lions to add more cornerback depth, considering they're not going to be able to keep all the cornerbacks on their roster right now. Right? They're not going to be able to keep 7 cornerbacks plus Brian Branch, plus CJ Gardner-Johnson, plus Kirby Joseph, plus Tracy Walker. You're not going to have 11, 12 members in your secondary when, you have a lot of other glaring needs, other really deep positions on the roster, like edge rusher, like offensive line, like wide receiver, even like running back. The Lions have a lot of deep positions in their depth chart. They're not going to keep around 12 secondary members. So some of those players are going to make the practice squad, and it makes no sense for the Detroit Lions to add more talent to the secondary, even if it might be better talent, especially if it means trading away a day 3 pick for a player that probably isn't going to start and play very much for the Lions in 2023. Now, Levi Wallace is not the only player to be mentioned as a potential player the Lions to add, as veteran Melvin Ingram is another player that has been rumored, another player that's been mentioned, and another player that's been mentioned as potentially adding to this Detroit Lions pass rush. Now, Melvin Ingram has been a very good veteran in the NFL for a very long time. 57 career sacks, 81 career tackles for loss, 3-time Pro Bowler, 16 forced fumbles, 9 fumble recoveries while playing over a decade in the NFL. The 33-year-old edge rusher is still currently looking for a team after spending his last year with the Miami Dolphins, totaling 6 sacks in 17 games. Now, very similar to Levi Wallace, the Lions don't need more pass rush. And even though they wouldn't need to trade any assets for Melvin Ingram, and although he would add a very good veteran presence, they do not need more edge rushers. They have Aiden Hutchinson, who's a great young player, who's a great leader on the defense and a great player in his own right. They have James Houston, a very good rotational pass rusher that's going to get more sacks than Melvin Ingram in less attempts. They have Romeo Okwara, a former team captain, a player that is very good at communicating on the defensive line, and a player that, again, would probably outproduce Melvin Ingram this season, and again, is significantly younger. Charles Harris, a younger prospect who more recently has put up really good numbers despite being injured last season. 2021 had 7.5 sacks, was the Lions' leading pass rusher. John Kaminsky signed a brand new deal, might not get 6 to 8 sacks, but is a kind of glue guy on the defense that is very versatile, can kick inside, can kick outside, and has been a very big part of the Lions' defense over the last year. Josh Pascal, former top 50 pick. You're not going to get rid of him, and he has a much higher upside than Melvin Ingram. And then you have Julian Okwara, a player that's more of an outside linebacker hybrid, but again, is more athletic, is younger, is more versatile, can do a lot more on the defense, as well as be a really good rotational pass rusher. So the Lions don't need Melvin Ingram. They don't need Levi Wallace. They don't need to add players really at any point this season. The Lions are at a point where they are an incredibly deep team. They don't need any more depth. They might be the deepest team in the NFL. What they're missing right now is a lot of star power. They're missing a top 5 wide receiver. They're missing a top 5 quarterback. They're missing, an elite lockdown cornerback at number 1, like a top 5 cornerback in the league, like a Jalen Ramsey, a Sauce Gardner, a Patch Surtain, right? They're missing elite star power. They're not missing depth. They have depth at every single position on this offense, and it's good quality depth, right? These are players that were starting in 2021, players that were making plays in 2022 that are now 4th, or fifth on the depth chart, that are now second or third string on the depth chart because the Lions continue to get better. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Those are the most recent news and rumors of the Detroit Lions. There are new helmets, Jameson Williams suspension update, as well as two players that could potentially be rumored to be added to the Detroit Lions, but likely will not be added this offseason. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about the news and rumors, what players you'd want the Detroit Lions to add, what you think about the new helmets and the Jameson Williams suspension, and just in general, any Detroit Lions news that you would like to talk about. But with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you go down below, subscribe to the channel, like the video, helps the channel out a ton. But with that out of the way, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!